All right. Hello, everyone. Sterling here again. So welcome to the second video. So let's jump right on in. To start off, let's share the screen. So video series number 2, first sentence of ECG reading. Resources used to build this are same as last time. So the outline is creating the first sentence, so interpreting the ECG. And when I say first sentence, it's basically the foundation of how you're going to read the ECG. And once you interpret that part, you can interpret the rest. So that includes the rate, rhythm, axis, and intervals. So I'm going to switch screens. Let's do this one. Yeah, so ECG cheat sheet. So we're looking at the rare part of the rare steak barbecue with Sterling. So we're talking about the rate. So we have this part of the cheat sheet, the axis, which is here, the intervals, and then the rhythm. So rhythm, we're going to come back to in one of the later sessions. Just to kind of introduce it though, we're not going to go into all the details. So we're going to keep it general approach, just kind of understanding how to get the basics of what your ECG is looking like. And then we'll have some practice at the end. So creating the first sentence. So rate. So when we're talking about heart rate, generally how you want to do it is you're going to count the number of large squares between 1 R to R. So here, if we're counting, you can see it says 4 boxes. Usually I just wait to find one. So this one's like right on a box, which is really nice. So I could go 1, 2, 3, it's about 4 boxes. So just what that says there. And then you could divide 300 by that number to get the beats per minute. So 300 over 4 would be 75. And normal heart rate is 60 to 100. Bradycardia being lower than that, tachycardia being higher than that. I read a book in somewhere, I think it was Dublin's Guide or Dublin's Rapid Interpretation of ECG, something like that. And he suggested that how you do it is you memorize these numbers down here. So 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, and 50. So how it works is for each large box, you keep counting down. And so it's a little bit faster. So if I was here, it'd go first box, 300, 150, 100, 75. So this is about 75 beats per minute, and that's accurate with that math. And it's just a little bit quicker, fast shorthand rules. There's something for irregular heart rates. So if the heart rate isn't quite always the same distance apart, using this quick hand rule isn't very helpful. So what we want to do is count the whole number of ECGs on the strip. So you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's 12, about, or maybe 13 there. And then if you know it's a 10-second strip, times it by 6, you get a minute of heart, a minute of beats. So 12 times 6 is about 72. Next step is rhythm, and how is it generated? So we have the SA node in the right atrium of the heart. It fires, it goes through the atria to the AV node. AV node has a slight delay, fires down the bundle of His through the fibers into the Purkinje fibers, ventricles contract. So if we lined it up with an ECG, so SA node fires, that's right here. Then 2, it's traveling through the atrium, so we see the P wave. 3, AV node delay. 4, QRS complex, so the ventricles contracting. And then the T wave is just repolarization. So there's several different rhythms, and this is kind of talked about a little bit later, since there's quite a few, but just to cover some of the basic ones. So there's sinus bradycardia. So sinus meaning it's from the SA node, and bradycardia meaning it's a slow heart rate. So brady meaning slow. So you can see there's like a P, a Q, and if we count it down that same method, 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, it's like almost 50. So less than 60 is bradycardia. And we know it's sinus because there's one P wave for every QRS. So we see P, Q, P, Q, P, Q, and there's a QRS. And the QRS is quite small. It's less than 2.5 small boxes, or somewhere around there. And generally I just kind of look at it, and if it looks nice and pointy and it doesn't look really wide, it's normal. And so usually I just use R to R interval. Sinus tachycardia. So this would be a heart rate greater than 100. So if we use that shorthand rule, so this would be 300, 150, and over here is 100. So this is like 125, so greater than 100. So it's tachycardia. And then, so there's a P wave. So we see P, Q, T, P, Q, or QRS, T, P, QRS, T. So we know it's coming from the SA node. And again, the QRS is nice and narrow, so that just solidifies that we know it's from the SA node and greater than 100. Some of the other rhythms, so there's atrial flutter, and basically it really stands out because there's always all these little sawtooth edges. So it goes like P, 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 Q, R, S, P, 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 Q, R, S. And the T is just kind of hidden in there. And the reason why you don't have like a whole bunch of QRSs like right after every P is because of the AV node delay. Atrial fibrillation looks like squiggly lines on the graph. And the rhythm is totally out of the place. So if we looked here, that'd be 1, 2, 3 boxes between R to R, 2 boxes, 2 boxes, 2 boxes, 3 boxes. So obviously this is not a regular rhythm. And the QRS is still nice and narrow. So we know that the Purkinje fibers, the bundle of His, are still firing normally, but it's something to do with the atrium that's off. And that's because it's AFib. There's another one called multifocal atrial arrhythmias. It could also be a tachycardia. So essentially what happens is the atrium has multiple points firing other than the SA node. So the muscle itself can depolarize spontaneously. So you see, here's this P wave, it looks like a wave, and then this one looks like a mountain, and this one's inverted. So there's at least 3 different P waves, and the QRS is still normal because those Purkinje fibers and the bundle of His are still firing normally. It's just this 1, 2, 3 or more. Some other rhythms, there's a junctional rhythm. So essentially what happens is when the SA node isn't firing correctly, then something else will take over for it. So the next slide describes this in more detail, so I won't talk about it too much here. There's also premature complexes. I also have a couple more slides explaining that, so we're going to just kind of move past this right now. And then sick sinus essentially means that the SA node doesn't work for a little while. You can see here, this completely stops, and then it kicks back in again. Escape rhythms. So this is what we were just talking about on the previous slide. So essentially, if the SA node isn't firing at a constant rate, something else will take over for it. Generally, the atria do it first. And so what you can tell is this P wave has got a nice rounded shape. It's like a hill, but then this one's nice and sharp, like a mountain. So you can see that sharp, sharp, sharp. So this is an atrial escape rhythm, and it should be about 60 to 80 beats per minute. So if we counted a 300, 150, 175, yeah, it's about 75, so it's about right. Then there's a junctional escape rhythm, which just means the AV node is taking over. So we can see here, here's the regular rate, P, QRST, P, QRST, and then suddenly it stops, and we go RST and RST, but there's no P wave. So that's kind of a hint that's not coming from the atria. So it should be about 40 to 60. And again, you could count that and it'd be around somewhere in there. And ventricular escape rhythm is a very big standout one. So you can see all these PQRST, PQRST, and then suddenly flatline, and then this really big wonky wave. So this is ventricular. You can see it's huge, and it's way bigger than the little 3 or 2.5 boxes that a QRS should be in, and it's very slow. Like it's less than like 20 to 40 beats per minute. So just showing the premature beats, just kind of in a little bit more detail. So you can see PQRST, PQRST, and then there's this weird looking P wave, and then the QRS follows. So that'd be from somewhere else in the heart. Another way that they call it, so it's an ectopic P wave or an atrial premature beat. PQRST, PQRST, and then there's a really early P, and then the QRS follows. So this is a little bit faster right here. Then it goes back to normal. So earlier than expected, shape is abnormal. Ventricular premature beats are going to look very weird. They go in PQRST, PQRST, and look at this huge P. If that's not, it's probably a T there. And then look at how wide this QRS is. It's a really weird repolarization. So the T is going the opposite direction. And it happens again over here. And so if it's just kind of like a one-off, and then we call that a ventricular premature beat. And the reason it looks so weird is because instead of going through the Purkinje fibers, bundle of His, it's just going through the muscle, so it's very slow, and it's not traveling on those highways. So this is a summary of some rules for determining the origin of the rhythm. So we'll go through them quick, but you can review these again on your own. So if the P wave is upright, it's probably coming from the SA node. If the P wave is inverted, so it's going down, it's probably from something other than the SA node, like the atria, AV node, or ventricles. If there's no P wave, it's not the SA node. You can just forget about him. He is not doing his job. A normal PR interval rules out the AV node as a source of like problem. So if the AV node was kind of running the show, you would have like the distance from the P wave would be almost nothing because you wouldn't have the signal traveling through the atrium to the AV node. And then same idea, if you had a normal PR interval, it's not coming from the origin of the signal isn't coming from the ventricle because it has to be coming from the top AV node delay ventricles fire. Wavy baseline with P waves and QRS complexes is no fibrillation because if it's kind of like going up and down from their breath, but they still have like a P, QRS, T, then it's organized. You know it's not fibrillation. Wavy baseline with no P waves is, so there's no P waves and it's wavy, so we're thinking atrial fibrillation. It's a wavy baseline with no QRS complexes, so this is really bad. This is like ventricular fibrillation. It's like, or sorry, over here. It's not good. Narrow QRS, so when you're looking at the QRS, if it's nice and narrow, that indicates that the highways are being used for Purkinje bundle of His, so we know it's the ventricles are working. Atrial rate. I don't almost ever look at these rules down here, but just to quickly cover it, atrial rate greater than 200, it's not like the SA node, it doesn't fire that fast. And a ventricular rate greater than 200 rules out something from above the AV node. So the SA node or the atria can't be the cause because that AV node delay should stop it from going over 200. If there's more P waves than QRS complexes, we haven't talked about this, yes, but there's a block at the AV node. That's in a later lesson we'll talk about. P waves are not all the size or shape, equals 2 or more origins for the P waves. We call that multifocal atrial tachycardia. That was in one of the earlier slides. And P waves and QRS complexes are present, but there's an absent PR interval, so 2 origins. So if the atria is firing and somehow the ventricle fires almost at exactly the same time, or like really close together, then you need to be thinking these are not running in sync because that AV node should be slowing down the firing of the atria to the ventricles. So talking about axis now, so rhythm was the big one, axis is a lot more simple. The options that we have for axis include, let's stay on this one, normal axis, so it's between AVL and AVF, so 30 to 90. Left axis, so it's more up here in the left side, so up to -90. We have right axis over here, so that's the blue square, so 80 to 90. And then we have extreme, they say extreme right. I mean, you could say it's extreme left. Anyways, it's extreme. And it's over by AVR, so past -90, somewhere around here. So there's a thumbs up rule, which just to explain it briefly, although you kind of can figure it out just intuitively. So if your thumb is lead 1 and your other thumb is AVF, you can decide if your left thumb is up and your right thumb is up, all things are good. It's a normal axis. So thumbs up, plus, plus, 2 thumbs up. If you have your left thumb up, so your left thumb is up, but your AVF, your right thumb is down, your left thumb is more. So you're saying it's a left axis, so it's in this area. Flip it around, so your left thumb, your lead 1, is down, and your right thumb, your AVF, is up. Then you're saying that you're in a right axis. So left down, right up. And if you have 2 thumbs down, so lead 1, your left thumb is down, and lead AVF, your right thumb is down, you're in an extreme axis. This is very weird. This is not good. So maybe I'll just go through that one more time. So if 1 and AVF are up, normal axis. If 1 is up and AVF is down, you're in a left axis. If 1 is down and AVF is up, you're in a right axis. And if both are down, you're in an extreme axis. This just shows that picture again. This shows the causes. So if there's like certain, like a left ventricular hypertrophy, that'll drive you towards the left axis. versus a right ventricular hypertrophy will push you towards the right axis, which is fairly intuitive. There's a couple other things in here that talk about it, but you can just read that on your own time. It's probably not as helpful to talk about here. Last thing is intervals. So there's the PR interval, and ideally it should be 0.12, which is 3 little boxes, to 0.2 of a second, which is 5 little boxes / 1 big box. QRS should be about 2, it should be 0.12 or 0.1 of a second. So 3 or 2.5 little boxes. Generally, you can eyeball it once you read an ECG for a little bit. And if it doesn't look narrow or kind of like pointy, it's probably not right. And then the last one is from Q to T, 0.44 seconds. When we were in it, Dr. Segal and like the other cardiologists that we had, they basically said if it's less than half between the complexes and it's not like, tachycardia, then it's normal. So less than half between R to R, it's normal. So practice. So week 2 ECG readings on assess.med. So this is the cheat sheet. So if you're just double checking, you can just look at this page, or you can look at that Word document that I have. And then this is the rhythms. And maybe I'll briefly just go over this. So rhythm. So you're looking at the relationship between the P waves and the QRS complexes. You want to especially notice if the P waves are upright, because that's telling you where it's coming from, such as like the SA node origin. So if it's regular 60 to 100 sinus, if it's 60 to 80, and you still have those P waves, but they're a little bit different somehow, that's like probably atrial. Bradycardia could be like 40 to 60 if it's a junctional rhythm from the AV node, or 20 to 40 if it's got really wide QRSs, and 20 to 40 it's ventricular. And if the P waves are inverted and they have a really short interval, you want to be considering either the atria are doing it, so 60 to 80 beats per minute, it's kind of different, or the AV node itself is kind of firing the signal, so it's kind of like going both ways. And then that'd be 40 to 60 beats per minute. If it's irregular, so if it's an irregular with a normal QRS and there's no P wave, then like the QRS is occurring irregularly, you're thinking AFib. If you see a sawtooth, QRS, QRS, that's probably flutter. And if there's no P wave and a really wide QRS, you're looking at something like VFib, VTAC. It depends. Once you see it, it's very easy to pick out. And then if somebody's in AFib, so it's really wavy baseline, you can look up and down between the leads, and then you'll see there's no P waves before the QRS, and that's kind of your hint that that's probably in AFib. Tachycardia, we didn't really talk about this lesson, but you can just Google it. It's some of them are quite obvious. So if it's like a narrow QRS, it's probably not the ventricle itself. I actually covered this in a later lesson talking about supraventricular, so above the ventricle tachycardias from the sinus node, the atrium muscle, or the AV node. Or it could be like just literally up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, really wide QRS, and there's no P waves. That's ventricular tachycardia. Again, just Google it. It's very, very easy to see. So we're going to practice from the week 2 ECG on assess.med called rate rhythm or rate axis rhythm. So we're just going to practice a few of the examples. The rest you can do on your own. So we're going to be looking at questions 4 through 6, 7 through 9, 13 through 15, 16 through 18. So if we were just to do this, so I could even just put rate, let's do axis, rhythm, and intervals. So I'll work through this one, and then the next one you can pause the video and then hit play again, and I'll just kind of read through it. So looking at rates, so here we have a nice one on the line. So I'm going to go with my bottom lead 2. So 300, 150, 175, 60. So it's about 60, 60, 60, maybe a little bit longer than 60. So I'd say rates like, and it's about like, I don't know, 55. So it's a bradycardia. Axis. So we're looking at 2. So the 2 leads that you're looking at is 2 and AVF. And if AVF is really unclear for some reason, or like these pictures are not the greatest quality, you can look at lead 2, and that'll definitely tell you where your your thumbs or your axis is. So AVF here is clear. So 1 is up, AVF is up, 2 thumbs up, it's a normal axis. Rhythm. So now we're looking at P waves, QRSs. So P, QRS, P, QRS, P, QRS, P, QRS, P, QRS, P, QRS. All right, looks like there's always a P, it's upright, it's right in front of the QRS, and this looks like a very regular interval. So it's a sinus rhythm, which just means it's from the SA node. All right, intervals. So PR interval. So I want it to be less than 1 big box, or 0.2 of a second. So if I look right at lead 1, yeah, it's within a box. Lead 2, yeah, it's probably within a box. Let's try to find, so here's a nice one. It starts right there. Yeah, it's about 0.2. Yeah, it's about 0.2. So if it's about 0.2, I'm happy. So 0.2. QRS, it should be less than 3 small boxes. And honestly, you can just look at this. This looks really nice and narrow. If you're not sure, you try to find the widest one on the page. You just do a quick scan. Which one looks weird? None of these look weird. So they're all normal. They're all within 3 boxes for sure, 2.5 for sure. So that's like 2 boxes. So QRS interval is like 0.08. It's normal. And then QT needs to be less than half. So R to R, and then there's my T, R to R, there's my T, there's R to R, there's my T. Yeah, it's less than half. So QT less than half, it's normal. Less than half is normal. So I'm going to copy this. Just go to the next page. Let's see how I did. So rate. Yeah, you could have done it over like the 10-second count. I just looked at the kind of across. So I said about 55, it's a bradycardia. And if you counted over 10 seconds, it would have been 57 beats per minute. So pretty close. Rhythm. So if you did rhythm next, sinus, so there's a P before QRS, it's so normal rhythm, sinus rhythm, and then upright in 1 in AVF. So that means the axis is normal. So we got normal axis, yeah, so bingo. And then I did intervals, but it doesn't look like they asked for intervals here. But you know, if you want to just practice, you could just do that too. It does note that the axis is like positive 70. I guess if you want to be an electrophysiologist or go further into cardiology, you should know that. Otherwise, just know where the general area is. All right, questions 7 through 9. So let's do this again. Rate, axis, intervals, and rhythm. So as you can tell, I don't rate and axis, I always do first. Rhythm, some people do before intervals. It really doesn't matter. You're always going to do these 4 things first, and they should all kind of work together to get your first sentence. So let's have a look at the rates. Let's try to find one. There we go. 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, just over 50. All right, so let's do the 10 count. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 8. So this is 8 on, if it's a 10-second thing, that says it's 48, which doesn't really make sense because I just counted with this and it was 300, 150, 100, 75, 60, it's over 50. So it's probably a bradycardia, but it's probably something around, let's say it's around 50. Some of the pictures of the ECGs are not over 10 seconds, but I'm just going to say it's around 50 for this. Axis, so 1 is up, AVF, looks like it's mostly up, 2 is definitely up. So this one was kind of ambiguous, I checked 2, so 1 is up, AVF is kind of like this, so 2 is up, normal axis, we're good to go. Intervals, so sometimes the P waves are really hard to tell. If you're really not sure, lead 2 and lead V1 are the best for the P waves. And you can see, wow, this P wave is like really small. Yeah, like probably normal. So honestly, that's actually how I look at it. It's probably PR is normal. QRS looks narrow. I mean, this guy's maybe 2. And usually you kind of just look in the inside part, I find. You just kind of look within the QRS itself, not the edges, but like within it. That's like 2, that's like 2. So QRS normal. And QT, there's the T, there's the T, there's the T. It's definitely less than half. So QT normal. rhythm. Well, based on suggestively saying, based on the QRS not being especially wide, so I'm not thinking it's like a ventricular rhythm. And then it does look like kind of inverted. So it looks kind of upside down, but it's still that 0.2. So based on how slow it is, this could be an atrial rhythm or a junctional rhythm, actually. So when we were thinking junctional, yeah, let's go with junctional rhythm. All right, so we've done that. So let's go to the next page. So rate, all right, so it was over 10 seconds. So they must have added one there. So it's about 54. I said about 50. So it's definitely a bradycardia. Axis. So with the axis, we had up and pretty well up. So I said normal axis. Axis is normal. Yeah, so that's good. Intervals, not really talked about. I said rhythm. Yeah, so I was thinking like a junctional or like an atrial rhythm. So you can see it's ectopic atrials because the P wave is inverted. So obviously that was different. So it's not coming from the SA node, but it is coming from above the AV node. So you're thinking an atrial rhythm. So we'll atrial rhythm. Obviously, practice makes perfect. So great. Last one, I think we're going to do, oh, two more. So great, rhythm, axis, intervals. Practice, let's do rates. So 300, 150, 175 looks pretty constant. So it's around 75. So that's normal. I'm going to do axis next. I find it a little bit easier. So 2 and ABF are up. So it's normal axis. So left hand, right hand, both normal. Good to go. Rhythm. I guess we could do rhythm next. So looks like this baseline doesn't have a clear P wave on lead 2, so you can see it's kind of wavy. But if I go over here in V1, P, 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 but it doesn't stay constant. It looks wavy everywhere else. This one looks constant, P, P, P. Yeah. Then let's check the rhythms. So do. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's about 4, 4, 4, 4. So based on this, it looks like it's pretty constant. So I'm thinking atrial flutter. So hopefully this is right, but I mean, if it's not, then I guess you'll just learn from my mistake. So based on the QRS complexes occurring fairly regularly, and yeah, it looks like they're fairly regular, and there seems to be this kind of sawtooth pattern, looks like a flutter. QRS, so the PR interval is shot, so it's just can't do, so NA. The QRS looks normal. So that tells me it's most likely the AV node is still working fine. And then I think what was the last one? Oh yeah, QT. Well, it's hard to see, but most likely this is the T, 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 T. So T is less than half, so what's normal? All right, so let's see what the next slide says. All right, so I was incorrect. So it's atrial fibrillation. So rate, it's about 80. So probably better to do the 10 count, but you know, it's still within sinus rhythm, so pretty close. So of course, fast failure P waves. So you can just kind of see how it's kind of like a wavy baseline. And obviously I haven't had enough practice for a little bit, but I think you get the idea, like this is not normal. So we can just kind of tell, hey, this doesn't look like a good rhythm. So AFib. And the axis is normal. So axis is up here, up there. So all good to go. All right, so last one. All right, so rate. We could do the 10 count this time. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 11 by 6 is 66. So that's normal. Let's come back. Let's do axis first. So up, this one's going down, this one's going down. So this looks like a left axis because only the one is up and the other is down. So again, 2 is down, A of F is down. This is the left axis. Rhythm. P waves are hard to see in lead 2. Really hard to see in lead 2. And I don't see anyone in V1. So I'm going to do the intervals next, and then I'll decide. So intervals. So since there's no PR interval, none, so it doesn't seem right. So QRS, so if the QRS is wide, I'd be thinking it's the ventricles, but it looks like it's within 2.5 boxes. It's pretty tight. So QRS is normal. So then, and then QT is definitely normal. It's less than half. So then my rhythms, I'm trying to decide now. So if it's 66, EV node is around 40 to 60, but this one's a little bit higher than that. Maybe from the atrium. Have a look. Yeah, well, I think it's actually might be a junctional rhythm, since I can't see any P waves, and I'd be expecting this coming from the atria to see P waves. So let's see if I got this one correct this time. All right, so I got the right rhythm, sinus, 1 P before every QRS. Oh, I see. Okay. All right. Anyways, so it's an axis, left axis, so that is correct. Intervals, it doesn't really talk about, but as I obviously missed, now looking at this, so sinus 1P. So if we go way back here, so there's the P, a really long delay, QRS, T, and then there's the P. So, you know, hopefully you caught that. Obviously I missed it this time. And so I guess this just kind of highlights, you know, you want to practice ECGs to be able to catch those small details, and hopefully this helps. So in summary, we created the first little sentence, we did rate, rhythm, axis, intervals, and did some practice with ECGs. And then the rest are in assist.med underneath that, what was it? Week 2 practice, rate, rhythm, rate, axis, rhythm. So yeah, good luck.